Story 1. His general response to COVID was to send federal troops against his own people. Story 2. One of my friends from high school voted for Donald Trump during our second year of college. He grew up in a conservative household, was brainwashed, and really wanted a Republican court even though he knew Trump was a moron. About 2 years later, he became a Democrat. He said, "I looked up every issue I cared about and all the facts behind it. I realized that Republicans were not on the right side of any of the arguments." Story 3. I did not vote because of my age, but I started getting interested in politics in 2016. I turned 17 in November 2016. I felt very alone supporting Donald Trump. I was at the tail end of leaving Christianity at the time, and it seemed like all my friends, my girlfriend, and the celebrities and musicians I followed were against him. From late 2017 to mid-2018, my values on social issues and politics changed completely, and I am now strongly left-wing. Although I could not vote or influence the election then, I now view my earlier political attention and immature views as inexcusable but also a sign of growth. A friend recently asked, "How are you not super conservative?" After I said my entire family, both immediate and extended, are right-wing Christians, I replied jokingly, "I became an adult and decided that empathy is really cool." It was a joke, but it captures how I think about these issues now. I try to consider how problems could be solved and why people might have made poor decisions instead of judging them, and I understand the bigotry in many of Donald Trump's statements and policies. In summary, between ages 16 and 20, I grew up a lot and moved from pro-Trump to the far left. Story 4. Among many other things, the turning point for me was the quid pro quo situation in Ukraine and the related cover-up. Story 5. I am fairly conservative and I agreed with some of Trump's actions, but events over the last 7 to 10 months changed my mind. His response to being impeached, his handling of the pandemic, and his unprofessional online presence convinced me I no longer excuse those behaviors. I also realized I am willing to pay more in taxes if it means more people will have life-saving health care and housing. Many of my friends remain very conservative, and I find their lack of concern for people in need hard to understand. I did not agree with many of President Obama's policies, but I miss his professionalism. Story 6. Okay, as someone who did not vote for Donald Trump, this whole thread gives me hope. I am a big fan of personal growth. We all know more today than we did yesterday. I will undoubtedly be wrong about something I believe now, and when I discover the truth, I will be okay with it. We need to make personal growth and being wrong acceptable. People are so afraid to say I was wrong that they never truly grow. I am not saying being a Republican is wrong. I am saying Donald Trump represents a strange moment in history, and we all have to deal with its consequences. Story 7. The last 4 years have included backing out of the Paris Agreement, taunting Iran, acting as if the coronavirus did not exist and then failing to respond once it could not be ignored, attempting to turn this country into a dictatorship by force, blatantly ignoring the Constitution and citizens' rights on multiple occasions, with the right to assembly being the most recent example. His childish disposition, and his fat fucking face. Story 8. My political opinions lean toward the idea that the government should exist to help, protect, and serve the people, not control them. I felt, and still feel, that is the opposite of how our government runs. 4 years ago, I was a month past 18 and excited to finally have a vote. I could affect change. I could help make the world a better place. I was full of cynicism and hatred for the way the world worked, and I wanted to change it. At 18, prepared with a Southern public education and the words of my Republican father, I was sure that electing a businessman and not a politician would help. I completely bought into the Trump campaign. I believed everything he said. I was young, foolish, and blinded by anger at the world. He was going to fix it. I went with my dad and voted for the first time with no doubt that I had made the right choice. I got my sticker, I took my selfie, and I was proud. Then he won. I was so excited. Something was finally going to change. I waited and watched as things began to happen. Like everyone around me, I made excuses. We can't expect him to fix everything in one day, and that stuff is all fake. Someone made it up to make him look bad. Then bad things kept happening, more information came to light, and they kept making excuses. Then I got busy. I had a child, I started my career, and I did not have time to pay attention to the news or politics. I have a baby, for God's sake. That was enough to worry about. When life calmed down and I had time to pay attention to the world, I realized we were years into his presidency and nothing had changed. The world was not a better place. The things I had laughed off as impossible or fake had happened. The things I had excused never stopped. As I kept paying attention, things kept getting worse. I had to accept that I was wrong. I had made a horrible mistake and it had hurt a lot of people. At first, those people were abstract in my mind. No one I knew had been directly affected yet in a major way. Then things worsened and the pandemic started. The choices he made put millions of people in danger, including people in my life. My mother is extremely high risk, my boyfriend had to get tested, and my kids were at risk. I was forced to understand just how badly his actions had hurt people. I regret voting for him. I regret that it took experiencing the negative effects firsthand to fully understand how badly I messed up. I wish I could take it back every time I am reminded that Trump was elected in part because of me. I will not vote for him in 2020. I do not know who I will vote for yet, but I will make sure I am as educated on all the candidates as I can be. I will try again. I will make a choice I am proud of and hope I am right this time. In the meantime, I have spent as much time as I can learning about all the things I thought were garbage in the past, and doing my best to tell everyone I possibly can that they need to listen. Edited to add, wow, this blew up. First, sorry for the wall of text. I wrote this late last night and I am on mobile, so formatting is hard. I tried to make it a little better by splitting it up. Second, I am at work right now, so I am trying my hardest to keep up with reading the comments, but most of that will have to wait a few hours until I am off. Third, thank you so much for all the awards. My first gold. I was shocked last night before I went to bed when this had 2 replies and 10 upvotes, so waking up to this feels surreal. I want to be clear that I did not post this to get a pat on the back or kudos from internet strangers, though I appreciate it. I posted this in the hopes that someone would see it and realize that they do not have to keep supporting something they know is wrong just because they supported it in the past. To those nasty replies about how I do not deserve the praise, that is fine. That is not why I posted this. You talking down to me for admitting I was wrong and that I have learned and moved on is exactly the reason so many people will never admit they were wrong. If you are reading this and you still support Trump because you think you have to, you do not. You can learn from your mistakes and grow. You can help the world change. Your political stance is not a lifetime commitment. Edited again. Thank you for another award. Story 9. I will be voting for Joe Biden after voting for Donald Trump in 2016. His politicization of the pandemic and his poor response to it are the main reasons for my change. I also strongly dislike the way he deals with Russia and the cronyism in his cabinet. I did not agree with everything George W. Bush or Barack Obama did or stood for, but I believe they were trying to improve the country in the best way they saw fit. Donald Trump seems motivated only by self-interest and has made a mockery of our nation's highest elected office. I am not proud to live in this country while he is at its helm. I look forward to November 3rd. Story 10. I was 21 and tired of one career politician after another becoming president. I believed that if Donald Trump, someone without political experience, could become president, it would open the door for us to be more accepting of non-career politicians. I always believed that anyone could be president, and I felt that someone further from the time-wasting nonsense that normally clogs politics would be more representative of the common American citizen. How on earth I thought Cheeto Bunker Boy was representative of the American people, I don't know. But now I realize that it is people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez who can truly understand what it is like to be a normal person and still exist in the political landscape. She is my new hero. Story 11. I was disappointed by a few things he did, but I was not fully aware of the scope of some actions, so they did not seem that bad. Then COVID-19 happened. He did not wear a mask until recently, and many of his supporters became anti-mask. Instead of leading by example and encouraging mask use, he discouraged masks at events. Then he began encouraging mistreatment of protesters. I went from a lifelong Republican to a Democrat within months. It surprised me that I changed so quickly, but I realized they were using brute force to impose what they think is right, regardless of what is morally right or what the country wants. I am less worried about my taxes increasing slightly if it prevents a child from dying of malnutrition. I am less concerned about preventing all welfare fraud if it helps people who truly need it. By the way, I have always been socially liberal. I just felt most social issues did not belong in politics. I have long supported prison reform and equal rights for everyone, but I am realizing most Republican politicians do not support those things. My eyes have been opened. I used to think liberals were oblivious to tax increases. I was wrong. Story 12. I feel like I was flippant in 2016. I live in a blue state that does not split electoral votes, so I felt like I could do it and it did not matter. Since then, I have grown as a person. I got married and watched my husband be diagnosed with a disease that would have bankrupted us if I had not had a government job, and it changed how I saw people. No one should have to decide to go bankrupt to get treatment they need to survive. I am now willing to pay a little more so no one has to suffer. I have also taken multiple diversity and equity trainings since 2016 that helped me understand concepts such as how saying all lives matter dismisses the point that some lives are not being treated as if they matter. This is personal growth and a sense of not wanting anyone to suffer. Update. I did not expect any movement on this post. It is a little overwhelming. To those insulting me, I hope that makes you feel better. If that is how you approach people you want to change and help grow, you are going about it wrong. To those with kind words, I am thankful for your well wishes. My husband receives life-saving treatment nightly, and we are hopeful for the future. Regarding why I think I would pay more in a universal healthcare system, I am very fortunate. To cover myself and my husband with the best tier for us costs $14.33 a month, with a $250 deductible each and a $1,500 out-of-pocket maximum. I did not consider what my employer pays, and the idea that I might get more if they were not paying. That cost shows more ignorance on my part. I would cynically believe they would save the money, but I suppose they would have to share to be competitive. For many people, some form of universal healthcare would save a lot of money, but I do not imagine it would for me. Unfortunately, and I do not think I am alone here, it sometimes takes seeing the impacts of something before you can understand the need for it. Story 13. I couldn't vote in 2016, but I would have voted for Trump. I will be voting for Biden this year. He pulled out and left the Kurds to be massacred, never listened to military advisors, committed treason, grossly mishandled a global health crisis at the national level, and tear-gassed his own people to take a picture with a Bible he definitely doesn't read. Some things are more important than lower taxes. Story 14. I thought he was better than Hillary. It was that fuck politicians type of thing. I hate him and what he has done to our country. Fuck this piece of shit. Edit. I hate edits, but to those of you threatening me and wishing terrible things on me, watch his interview yesterday and tell me this is the hill you want all of us to die on. Come on. Story 15. I could not vote for Hillary Clinton, but I never thought Donald Trump would be this bad. He gave away national park land. He stripped Environmental Protection Agency restrictions, including protections against mercury pollution. He made racist comments and began name-calling, using nicknames such as Sleepy Joe and Crazy Nancy. He threw a piece of candy at Angela Merkel and hung up on a phone call with the Australian Prime Minister. He has given America a black eye. He is a bully who needs to go. Story 16. I didn't vote for him, but I voted third party last time. I hated both options, so I voted my conscience. Now, for years later, I have seen his political following develop into a brainwashed cult, especially where I live in the Deep South. Everything he says and does is adored by them, and any policy, action, or statement opposing him is taken as a personal insult. They label you as anti-American, socialist, or terrorist, to name a few. I have had to watch as Fox News has rotted my parents' brains, feeding them blatant propaganda around the clock. Nothing I can say, do, or show will make them think differently at this point. Each of his supporters is blind to the many ways he has undermined our democracy, and I simply cannot bear to have this man embarrass the United States any longer. He speaks incoherent gibberish every time he opens his mouth, yet none of his supporters sees a problem. They hail him as a genius, even a god emperor. Story 17. I grew up in a remote conservative town. I took what my parents and others said as fact and adopted their political views. I never did my own research on politics. Since then, I have met amazing people who helped me see things from a different perspective. Now I see the problems with what I believed before. I am happy to say that I do much more research and do not go into the voting booth blind. I am no longer conservative. Story 18. I voted and then went to the grocery store with a couple of my younger children. A very nice young Hispanic man working there helped me put groceries in my car so he could retrieve my shopping cart. He noticed the "I voted" sticker on my child and asked who I had voted for. I hesitated to answer and realized I felt shame. After Trump won, I wondered how much damage one man could really do. Those 24 hours have haunted me for the last 3 years. Since March 15, 2020, I have been self-quarantining with my family, and I have had too much time to think about what a colossal mistake he was and about voting Republican, because those in office now are like a death cult. It has been eye-opening. I have told my family that if I get coronavirus disease 2019 and die, they should put on my tombstone that I died because I voted for Trump in 2016. Story 19. I was 23. My decision was influenced by people around me, and I refused to let that happen again. My family and friends are still on the Make America Great Again streetcar. His handling of the various situations over the past 3 years has been utterly awful. I am truly sorry, and I will not be voting for this pig in the upcoming election. Story 20. I cannot relate directly to the question, but reading these responses gives me so much hope. I was 15 during the election, so I definitely could not vote, but I was fairly informed about politics. My household has always supported Trump. I remember people saying that most children adopt their parents' political beliefs, but I felt uneasy about what my family said about him and how they defended him when he did something wrong or said something horrible. Hearing them sometimes broke my heart and scared me. The biggest example was when he rolled back health protections for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people. My mother knows that I fall within that spectrum, and when I tried to tell her how she could keep supporting him despite actions such as dismissing the Black Lives Matter movement, pushing away protesters for a photo opportunity with a Bible, and saying, "When the looting begins, the shooting begins," I explained how fearful I felt. Both of my mother's daughters are Black, and my second oldest sister and I are both part of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer community. My mother's response was, "But if it were not for him, we would be at war with Russia and North Korea." I have a lot of hope for the upcoming election, especially now that I can vote. I hate that many adults cannot see how terrible he is. I am still young, yet I feel more able to recognize how harmful his actions are. Story 21. When he appointed a Goldman Sachs executive as treasurer, it was all downhill from there. Story 22. My story is like many others. I grew up in a small Christian town where everyone was conservative or quiet, and climate change was dismissed as a hoax perpetuated by climate scientists to create economic demand for their work. I was taught that the government is out to get you and that we should have as small a government as possible. Had I done any research on Donald Trump, I might have known that was not even his goal. I was 18 and had gone to the big city for school where there were maybe 5 conservatives. I felt like the world was going crazy and, for some arrogant reason, thought I saw what no one else did. I voted for Donald Trump without a second thought. Fast forward a year. I dropped out and moved back to my hometown because I felt I could not handle being around liberals for 3 more years. I started community college, took a macroeconomics class, and learned about economic policy from sources other than a YouTube video. Once it became clear that trickle-down economics does not work, I started to wonder what else Democrats could be right about. That ultimately led me to become someone who marches with Black Lives Matter, donates to Bernie Sanders' campaign, and believes in climate change. I do not want to spam the comments with thanks, but I cannot say enough to the people supporting me here. This has not been easy. My friends think I am crazy and that I have given in to the machine. Every time I bring this up with them or my family, it becomes an argument. I know this is a long road, and I am not done. 6 months ago, if you had asked me if I was racist, I would have said no. Now I am. Learning about systemic racism and how the actions of a few impact the lives of many. Please be patient and do not get discouraged when talking with people who hold the views I once did. Yes, there was one moment when everything clicked, but there were 1,000 books, internet comments, television shows, movies, and other things that put me in a position to accept what I could not before. Thank you. If you want to support causes instead of rewarding me, please donate to your local food bank. If you cannot afford to give money, consider donating blood. It does not hurt as much as you might think, and I even got a lemon-flavored drink afterward. Story 23. I work for the United States Postal Service. It's a mess with the newly appointed Postmaster General. I'm concerned about my future employment and my livelihood. Please wish us luck in 2020. Story 24. Ignorance and religious pressure were the reasons I voted for him. The only news outlet I paid attention to was Fox News, and my church framed it as a choice between heaven and hell. Voting for Hillary was portrayed as tantamount to killing a baby with your bare hands. I didn't like him, but I didn't know it was that bad. A few months after the election, I heard a rumor that he had a rape allegation. I wasn't aware of this, so I did some digging. Within a year and a half, my ideological views changed drastically as I deconverted and began consulting more news sources. I realized I had been the product of concerted propaganda efforts by right-wing cable news outlets and people who took it as gospel. I educated myself, and since then I have been deeply involved in following politics. I watch hearings, read source documents, follow Donald Trump on Twitter, and verify my information as much as possible. I speak out against Trump and similar politicians, and I work in my community to oppose what they stand for. I am trying my best to atone for the choice I made in ignorance, because when it comes to these decisions, one cannot afford to be ignorant. Story 25. I moved out of my parents' house, attended college, met people from many backgrounds, and now work in a career where I know what a good leader looks like, and he is certainly not that. When I say I attended college, I do not mean getting drunk in a fraternity basement. I mean living on my own for the first time, learning with smart people from diverse upbringings, and becoming an adult. Story 26. The pandemic has been hell. I have never voted for a Democratic candidate in my life. Joe Biden will be the first. Get me out of this. Black Lives Matter. Story 27. I lived in New York, which was always going to go to Hillary Clinton, whom I hated for undermining Bernie Sanders, so I figured I would cast a protest vote for Donald Trump out of spite. I really did not believe he had a chance. Boy, do I regret my decision. Story 28. What is really messed up is that anyone who knew anything about Donald Trump during the 40 years before he won knew he was, and is an absolute 100% con man and psychopath, an egotistical asshole who should not have received more than his family's vote. This nightmare was inevitable. It turns out the country is crawling with people who are just like him, only much dumber. Story 29. I did not vote for him, but I realized the United States really messed up when he threw paper towels during a speech in Puerto Rico after the island had been devastated, when many people had no power and thousands were still missing. I will never forget that. He literally thought he was a hero for throwing them. Edit. Thanks for the awards. Story 30. He has failed across the board. From education to foreign policy, he has done nothing but cripple the systems people rely on in this country. A friend with an immigrant wife did everything right 6 months in advance, yet her visa paperwork was not completed before it expired. He allows our Kurdish allies to die and is a horrible person. I regret voting for this despicable person and his corrupt administration that has made our country a shithole. Story 31. In 2016, it was the first time I had ever voted. I did not think he had a chance, so I voted for him because I thought it would be funny. In 2020, it was not funny. Story 32. I knew very little about politics and believed the whole system was corrupt. Because he seemed so stupid and crazy, I hoped he would do such a terrible job that it would shock people into reforming the system and prevent candidates like him from being elected. Unfortunately, he performed beyond my expectations and my plan backfired terribly, causing harm and even deaths. I do not hold myself completely responsible for the fallout, but I recognize my role in it. I did not realize how much he could be allowed to get away with. Story 33. I'm Australian. In Australia, we have a habit of not voting politicians in but rather voting them out. We sometimes end up with a worse outcome, but it feels good to vote a politician out. So, From down under to the United States of America, please vote a politician out. Story 34. I couldn't vote in 2016 because I did not send a request for an absentee ballot soon enough. I intended to vote for Donald Trump because of his plans for the military. I was separating from the army and wanted to make sure they would get what they needed to win and survive in combat. But after seeing him handle coronavirus disease 2019 and claim he was not responsible for anything, I was extremely angry. In the army, I learned that as a leader, you are responsible for everything your element does or fails to do, from the team leader up to the chief of staff. The President of the United States is responsible for everything that happens in this country, whether they like it or not. I am not voting for Donald Trump in the coming election. Story 35. I did not vote for him in 2016. I was a registered Republican until his nomination and then switched, but my father voted for him. My father passed in August 2017. In the months before his death, we had long talks about Donald Trump. He said he had made a mistake voting for him, that Trump was not the Christian he claimed to be, and that he was not a good man. If my father were still alive today, it would be the first election in which he did not vote Republican. Story 36. I am 50 and I have never voted for anything in my life. I will be voting for Mustard Burp before I vote for this fucking asshat. You can bet your bottom dollar. Story 37. I'm not American, but my aunt and cousin both voted for Donald Trump because they were tired of corrupt politicians dominating the scene. They thought a businessman might be able to cut through the tidal wave of problems in United States politics. They are very disappointed in how anti-science he is and say they will not vote for him again. Story 38. Seeing how he operates in office, we could have fought off the coronavirus, staved off the violence during the Black Lives Matter movement, and set ourselves up for a better planet. He has shown he is not a competent leader. He prefers drama to diplomacy. Story 39. I've always been a moderate conservative and consider myself a Republican. Until now, I had been apathetic about politics, much to my husband's dismay because he loves talking politics. I was too busy with my kids for the last 7 years to pay attention to how far right the right has gone. I reflexively voted for the Republican candidates in 2016, including Donald Trump, and I deeply regret it now. After he became president, I realized he did bad things, but I did not have the mental energy to dig into it. This year, I became deeply involved in reading and informing myself about the spread of the coronavirus when it started in Asia. Trump did one bad thing after another, crippling our response and confusing the public. This resulted in a country divided when it should have been united against the virus. It enraged me. Finally, I saw the petty and selfish things Trump has been doing. The pandemic has really shown everyone's true colors. Then George Floyd was murdered and peaceful protests were met with brutality. Trump encouraged violence and ordered a clearing of peaceful protesters to create a photo opportunity. That was the last straw. I started to look into Joe Biden. I am not an automatic Biden supporter and I had never paid much attention to him. I also heard negative rumors about him. That he is old, creepy, senile, and prone to gaffes. Compared to the damage Trump has done in the last 6 months, I will take the rambling grandfather. I watched recent interviews with Joe Biden, including ones by Trevor Noah and my favorite parenting YouTube channel, What's Up Moms. I was surprised. He is quite eloquent and much more human than Trump, who acts like a toddler. Biden has my vote. My fundamental beliefs have not changed, but the Republican Party has devolved and is led by a narcissistic, petty, racist, childish coward. We cannot have 4 more years of this. Story 40. America is far from great at this moment. He has taken a smoothly functioning system, beaten it like a rental car left in a crack house, and destroyed everything that makes America livable. He has destroyed our international standing, undermined the balance of global power, given Russia and Vladimir Putin immense influence over Europe and United States elections, crippled a strong economy, stolen trillions of dollars, and caused nearly 200,000 deaths. He asked what they had to lose. Apparently everything. The Roman Empire took longer to fall. Story 41. I voted third party because I wanted to send a message. I thought my vote would not matter. He had no chance, and even if he won, He would not be able to get anything done because the Republican Party would oppose actions that conflicted with its mission statement or harmed its image. Mud on my face. Story 42. Mishandling of coronavirus disease 2019, including discrediting his medical experts, denying the severity of the disease, and not acknowledging all the people who have died. Refusal to deliver a message of unity regarding the Black Lives Matter movement. Responding to protests with Gestapo federal troops. Story 43. I was not very into politics when I voted for Donald Trump in 2016. I voted for him because I thought the choice between him and Hillary Clinton was like the South Park vote between a douche and a turd sandwich. Trump was my turd sandwich, which I considered better than a giant douche. The turning point came during the impeachment trial, which I watched like a soap opera. Adam Schiff spoke with easy-to-follow logic and passion. Republicans repeated their talking points after Schiff's speeches, and he debunked each argument. It was like watching Eminem in the final rap battle in the movie 8 Mile. It opened my eyes to Republicans' lying and faulty logic on almost every issue. Story 44. 2016. Haha. How bad could he be? 2020. Real fucking bad. Story 45. I didn't vote, but my father did. He said that presidents need to have a sound mind and be strong and bold. When riots happened, he learned that Donald Trump was not the strong, bold leader he had imagined. He hid in his bunker, not because people were going to raid the White House, but because he was scared. He did not care about the people asking for change. Instead of reforming corrupt police, he walled off the White House so no one could approach it. Story 46. Hello. I am English and do not have a vote in this election, and believe me, we have enough problems of our own over here, but I pay a lot of attention to American politics. It is in the news here at the moment because of how batshit crazy Trump is. I saw a headline the other day saying officials in China were secretly hoping Trump would be re-elected because he destabilizes the United States of America so much that another 4 years of him would help China become a more dominant global superpower by diminishing the United States' power internationally. I thought, Jesus, that is as damning an indictment of the man as one could get. He is everything that is wrong with the world today, in my opinion. I will keep my fingers crossed for all of you in the election. Good luck. Story 47. I was an 18-year-old high school student in the rural South. My family was Southern Baptist and conservative. I wasn't at the point of having my own political beliefs. I basically accepted my family's beliefs as fact. I've grown up and changed. The world has changed too. The 22-year-old version of me definitely would not have voted for Trump in 2016, and I will not be voting for him this year. While I still hold many conservative beliefs, I am far from the alt-right and Republican voters who will be voting for Trump in 2020. Story 48. I was 24 when I began to grow and mature, developing empathy for others. I became frustrated with the constant tweeting, lies, and whataboutism. I also stopped watching Fox News. Story 49. I was barely 18 when I voted. I was still a high school senior. I grew up in an extremely conservative town with opinionated parents and a lack of access to the outside world. I was not allowed on any social media. Then I went to college, met people of other races, creeds, and sexual orientations, and I learned empathy. I regret my choice, and I know that the Trump administration has caused substantial pain and suffering for many people. I am trying to do my part by educating myself and calling people out on their falsehoods whenever I am in my hometown. Thank you, everyone, for the support and the award. Do not forget to vote. Story 50. I got stuck voting for what I thought was the lesser of two evils. Honestly, I was heavily influenced by my father. By influenced, I mean he threatened to kick me out of the house if I voted for someone else. Do not get me wrong. I did not like Clinton, and even now I do not like either candidate. I want it to stop. I do not want a leader who will divide us further. While I am centrist in politics, we need someone to bring us together. I do not know for sure if Joe Biden is the right person for the job, but I know Donald Trump will not make America greater. I do not agree completely with Trump or Biden, and I do not know if there will ever be a candidate who aligns perfectly with my views. Trump had his time. Look at the country. We are divided, at each other's throats, fighting and rioting while we have a president who openly mocks everything. I want peace. I do not know if Biden will bring it, but I know Trump will not. Edit. I did not expect this to gain so much attention. Many people are asking why I did not lie. It is because of something that happened when I was a child involving lying to my parents. My sister lied and my parents could prove who had done it. I was 8 and she was 5. We faced a severe punishment that I do not want to describe because it makes me anxious. I'm an adult now, but that does not go away. I cannot lie well because of that. Even if I had been older when I voted, it only takes one event to deeply affect your psyche. I was trying, in a backwards way, to protect myself and my sister by not lying. I have gone to therapy for it, and I do not talk to my father much anymore. Please stop asking why I did not lie. Story 51. I have conservative parents, and I did not think very deeply at the time. I had just turned 18 and barely knew who I was. I definitely would not vote for him now because I know I am gay. Story 52. I voted for him in 2016. I cannot apologize enough to my fellow humans. This is my record of personal and political misconduct. It does not cover environmental destruction, industrial corruption, or treason, improper handling of classified materials. Jared Kushner security clearance downgraded. The president's first year saw well-being drop for the first time in 10 years, according to a Gallup study of 160,000 adults. The White House lied about a domestic abuse scandal. The president did not direct the director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation to stop Russian interference. National Rifle Association, Russia, and alleged money laundering ties. Following a Koch brothers policy manifesto. A tax overhaul that could contribute to a global race to the bottom. Identified as a destroyer of rights by Amnesty International. Official evidence of collusion related to George Papadopoulos. Carl Icahn sold millions in stock a week before the president's steel tariffs. Andrew McCabe was fired one day before his scheduled retirement. The president diverted money from a children's cancer charity into his businesses. The president's foundation faced a lawsuit for misusing charity funds. Ordered to pay $2 million after diverting funds from a veterans fundraiser. Reduced protections for a national monument in Utah to allow mining. Refused asylum to victims of violence. Excused human rights abuses by North Korea. Refused to sign Republican Party legislation to stop separating immigrant children from their parents. Praised Recep Tayyip Erdogan. Erdogan's security personnel attacked United States protesters and executive personnel, and the president apologized. Reversed stance on North Korea peace talks and declared them a threat. Employed undocumented workers at low wages for construction work. The White House did not deny striking a deal with Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy. Ending temporary protected status could cause more than 200,000 United States-born children to be separated from their parents. Planned military parade would have cost roughly $90 million. Canceled a planned pay raise for federal workers. Suggested that protesting should be illegal. Beekeepers sued the administration over pesticide approvals that harm pollinators. Considered extraditing a political exile to an authoritarian government. Barred investigators from the International Criminal Court from entering the United States. Hate crimes increased more than 200% in areas where the president held rallies. Cut funding for abortion services through the global gag rule. Proposed arming Saudi Arabia with advanced nuclear work and cooperation despite their human rights record. Ordered opening Arctic waters to drilling in a manner later ruled illegal. Overturned 25 denied security clearances for associates. Reported financial ties to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Encouraged border agents to use lethal force without consequence. Sabotaged major conservation efforts in defiance of congressional intent. Offered pardons for immigration official crimes. Refused to assist refugees from the Bahamas after a hurricane. Sought broader powers to monitor smartphones. Customs and Border Protection agents harassed journalists at the border. The administration, which promised to drain the swamp, added 281 lobbyists to the administration. Threatened to cut federal aid for California wildfires after previously offering aid for Russia's wildfires. pardoned members of the military accused of war crimes and restored promotions, blocked United States recognition of the Armenian genocide and aligned with Turkey, complained about the Nobel Peace Prize days after threatening war crimes, degraded definitions and enforcement against domestic violence, encouraged war criminals to campaign on his behalf, kept Affordable Care Act enrollment markets closed during the coronavirus crisis. The campaign covertly made payments to relatives of campaign staff. An armed Reaper drone was deployed over Minneapolis protests, diverted funds from the Federal Emergency Management Agency to fund border operations that included family separations, reallocated $210 million from other programs to fund border enforcement, reduced protections for student victims of sexual assault, suggested police should use stop-and-frisk tactics to curb urban violence. I will vote differently this year. I will inform myself using open secrets. Story 53. My mom has done a complete 180 on Donald Trump over the past few months. Before this year, she mostly got her news from email forwards, my stepdad's Facebook feed, she does not have her own, and from chatting with my grandmother, who is a lifelong Republican who donates regularly, watches Fox News around the clock, and believes in various conspiracy theories. She would occasionally watch the local news on television. Two things changed. First, my mom finally got a smartphone for work because they moved their scheduling to an app, so now she has an aggregate news feed. Second, the COVID-19 pandemic happened, and she actually started reading that news. Suddenly she was reading everything Fox, the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and so on. She keeps calling me to talk about politics now because my stepdad thinks literally everything is fake. He has never believed the moon landing, so that is not new. It has just gotten worse. She is asking me about things Donald Trump has done, many of which happened before he won the election. She is catching up on more than 4 years of events and is completely mortified. Until now, I thought she was a lost cause. She would always defend Trump in conversation, and whenever I mentioned something awful he had done, she would ignore it and change the subject. I do not know exactly why the switch flipped so hard. Almost everyone she knows besides me is very conservative, and I only visit every few months, so that was not enough to create dissonance. She still defends her original vote for Trump because she dislikes Hillary Clinton intensely, but she has turned against Trump completely and is not going back. Story 54. I didn't vote for him, but I almost did in 2016 because I thought he was a successful businessman who would grow the economy and pay down our unsustainable debt. Instead, we got the largest deficit before the coronavirus, tax cuts for the wealthy, and I learned he was not that successful, just a con man who did not pay contractors. It's hard not to make money when you are a professional cheater. Reminders. 1. I did not vote for Trump. Please stop asking me how or why I could have voted for him. 2. I dislike Trump, but I'm starting to understand why his supporters feel isolated and defend him. When everyone attacks me for my honest opinion, and even for my admission that I briefly drank the orange Kool-Aid, it pushes me away from the Democratic Party. This sort of discourse is why our country is so divided and why Trump can hold on to his base. You are playing into what Trump wants by relentlessly attacking his supporters as if they are not human for considering him. I'm an independent who cares about the economy, and for a moment he seemed like a good choice. But after seeing more of his character, I voted for Hillary Clinton. Instead of screaming, "How could you?" Drop the condescending attitude and listen for a minute. That's how you can help reunite this country and defeat Trump in November. Also, thanks for the gold. Story 55. I am so embarrassed to admit it. Hillary Clinton had always been drilled into my brain as the epitome of a limousine liberal establishment candidate, and I was livid with how Bernie Sanders got shafted. I voted for Bernie in the primary. On election day, I was coming from work at an auto shop. They were all pumped on Trump, and I thought worst-case scenario he would mess up, look foolish, and hurt the Republican Party. It was not like the people around him would actually let him cause any real harm, right? I was really wrong. In short, I was 24, naive, and more focused on screw the two-party system than on making this country a good place for everyone to live. I was raised pretty conservative, and Clinton was like a swear word in my house. I was raised Mormon, so sex scandals were about the worst thing a president could do back then. I left home in 2010 and was much less exposed to the news at college, Brigham Young University. I served a mission from 2013 to 2015 and missed a lot of the early Trump news during that time. The only political ideal I really had at the time was screw the two-party system. I felt Bernie Sanders was a great answer and would represent the best interests of the people. Hillary Clinton was so ingrained in me as evil that I could not see her in a more realistic light. So, since Bernie was out and Trump seemed less entrenched in the system, I fell for the last-minute hype and voted for him. I never said it was logical. I regretted it. What changed my mind? I never really liked Trump as a candidate, so it did not take much to change my view. I think many people responding are being disingenuous and act as if Trump has done nothing wrong. I do not claim to be an expert, but I feel strongly that Trump is objectively a poor leader, and that should be apparent by now. For one, he bungled the COVID-19 crisis, and his desire to downplay it for political gain was gross. That example was not the single thing that changed my mind, probably his frequent golf outings from the start, or my developing more empathy and leaving a toxic conservative lifestyle, but it is enough to change the mind of anyone who is not a die-hard Trump supporter. Story 56. Boost this shit because people need to see that growth is amazing and that changing your mind is healthy. Literally, what the hell happened to the reply section on this comment? It spiraled so quickly. Story 57. You had hoped he would keep his promise, but he has repeatedly proven he cannot get things done and does not follow through. He is a used car salesman, and you never received your car. Story 58. I thought someone who was not a career politician might be a positive change. Boy, was I wrong. I wish I had paid more attention to what a lying, thieving, tax-dodging, conniving, nepotistic, misogynistic, racist con man he really is. He is not unlike many politicians, but worse. I am so ashamed. Story 59. Jack Whitehall told a joke and it killed. It was about Americans being extremely stupid. Many of you are smart, but when you are stupid, you really are. We have the village idiot looking up at the clouds. Yours is the president. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.